So my talk is about shared libraries. A few months ago, I was actually asked by, and I forgot his name, Peter maybe, co-organizer Herbert, yes, Herbert, to ask me if I could also give a talk on shared libraries, Jenkins shared libraries at Continuous Delivery Amsterdam meetup. So here I am. At the time, I was working for ABN AMRO, working on shared libraries for the whole bank. Meanwhile, I have moved to Cloudbees, the company behind, enterprise version of Jenkins. So my name is Joost from Griendt. Right now I'm DevOps Consultant for Cloudbees during EMEA region, so mostly Europe, where basically I help companies with the more, complex parts of integrating Jenkins into their organization. So how do you use pipelines well, how do you use all the tools available to support whatever you want to do with your organization, continuous delivery wise or DevOps wise. Right, so that's that little agenda. So I'm briefly gonna touch on Jenkins pipelines as code, just to quickly get to the point, like why is there such a thing as shared library? Why do you want to use it at all? Where does it come from? Alright. Some parts can be fairly technical, especially if you're not that used to using Jenkins. So please interrupt me if you have questions. I don't want to lose you halfway. And especially with the small crowd, I think we have more than enough room to answer any kind of questions. So Jenkins pipeline, who has used Jenkins with its native pipeline feature? So Jenkins pipeline with Jenkins file and so on. Okay, quite a lot. That's good. So anyone familiar with this? So this is how we used to do that with freestyle jobs, and then you chain them together, and then there was someone who made a nice plugin so that we can see how we chained them together. But that was very fragile, and well, if your Jenkins master had a problem, then your whole flow was gone. You had to recreate the job, so you had to find a way to generate the jobs, etc. Lots of work has gone into tools to support that, like Jenkins Job Builder from OpenStack or the Job DSL language. But Jenkins moved on, and with the new UI as well, bringing it back to past 2000 era with the UI. So the famous Blue Ocean UI, and now we have pipelines that show it like this. So I think that's a vast improvement. So how do you build them like this? Well, we use what we call pipeline as code. So you use a Jenkins file where you can write Groovy or you can write a declarative format. So one of the key aspects of it is that every application, every code base, every repository has its own Jenkins file, has its own instructions how it should be built. Potentially how it should be deployed, but that's up to you. So then with the pipeline, nowadays we have several job types, and we have several styles. So who here has used a scripted style where you really just write Groovy? Okay. And who here has used the declarative format? Okay. Anyone use both or no? All right. Nowadays I strongly prefer the declarative format. The scripted one gives you more flexibility, but in the long run, you can create a big mess, which needs constant support and refactoring, which is difficult to maintain in the long run, also with changing plugins. Declarative format, especially nowadays, much better supported also in the UI. So let's say, no icon here. But nowadays we also have there's also an editor which allows you to edit your pipeline right from the UI, which works with declarative format but not with scripted, because script is basically, can be anything, right? Job types. So I guess you all know at least the pipeline job type, right? The very basic one where you have either inline code or you have multi-branch, or you have the from SCM type where it loads a Jenkins file from somewhere. So my personal favorite is actually more the further abstract type. So we have something in between. We have the multi-branch pipeline. I think the name is chosen poorly in the sense that it kind of ties the name to, for example, working with branches, but it does a lot more than just that. So it also helps you with more, how to say, making your job cleaner, less to configure, less to maintain. Gives you more, for example, environment variables. So who here has used, for example, who here has used the multi-branch pipeline job? All right, you have used the normal pipeline job. Yeah. Okay. The biggest difference is you point more to a repository, and it takes care of scanning your repository for branches which meet criteria. So you can the basic default criteria is you have Jenkins file. You can rename the file. You can give it a different name. You can say only things that match this name, or every branch but this name. And just like with lots of other configuration options in Jenkins, you can use the and style regex, right? So that way you can very steer with, if you don't want, if you say we only want master branch and pull request to be done, for example, we've seen that a lot, then you can filter that in and then it will only do that. One of the benefits is that one, it gives a sort of standard format, so if everyone else uses a multi-branch pipeline job, then the configuration will be very, very similar. It provides some environment variables, but it knows which branch it's checking out, so it can give you information about git commit, for example. So you don't have to check that out, you don't have to figure that out command line yourself. It will be present as an environment variable for you. And if you use different kind of source, like you can have a source as Bitbucket or GitHub, it actually also knows your pull request information and commit history and so on. You can get more information from there as well. So generally preferred above pipeline. So my advice would be to use pipeline only if you just want to test some snippets. And use multi-branch pipeline for any actual application. Or if you happen to use Bitbucket or GitHub, then I would advise you to use those kind, so GitHub or Bitbucket. I will show them later for those who want. Which actually says, okay, for example, for Bitbucket or GitHub, I'm pointing to a team or organization, and it can scan every repository in that organization. Again, you can filter what should be included or excluded. And then from there, it creates a multi-branch pipeline job for every repository it found, and that will, of course, then check its branches. Big benefit about that is, say, we have 10 Java applications all built with the Spring framework. They're roughly similar, part of the same team, for example. They built a group of microservices, and you can let it point to that team or that organization, and they have to maintain one Jenkins job, where they only point to their team or organization, and that's it. And everything else related to their pipeline will be in their code base. All right. So just as a warning, when I will write the example later on in the demo, I will use decorative format. Okay. So. Yeah, so who here has used a shared library before?
As a user.
Oh,
I know it's there.
Okay.
I haven't written it.
So, right, concept of shared library is that you can write some functions or you can write some classes that allows you to reuse functionality. So again, as I said, you have several applications roughly similar, going to use roughly the same kind of thing, for example, performance test during your CI, and you can just write a function, make sure it's part of a library. That library comes from a Git repository, for example, is versioned as well, and
yeah. So we do for example build like npm libraries, and we publish them to like Artifactory, JFrog Artifactory, and yeah. So that is, I think, a shared library, right? So common functionality like some logging abstractions and some I don't know, like Kubernetes API abstractions or
For example, yeah. So basically, part of your CI or continuous integration or continuous delivery builds, right? The pipeline itself. If you have functionality in there, like for example, we do some Docker registry magic. Okay, make a function. Every application can simply say, I want my artifact as go to is an image with this name. You make sure it gets into the repository. I don't care where it is. I don't care how I get there. I know I need to do that. And that allows two things, but we'll get into that later. So basically the premise of shared libraries, okay, you're going to write more applications, and we want every application to have its own pipeline, so you might end up with lots of duplicate code doing the same thing. And that's a shame, right? We've been taught, of course, always to, don't repeat yourself. Adhere to the dry principle. So shared library is there to help you with it. And shared library can be configured in multiple levels. So you can, on a multi-branch pipeline level, basically it's a folder, so any kind of folder, so whether that's multi-branch pipeline, GitHub organization, or Bitbucket team job, you can configure it there. You can configure it in a folder if you have, for example, a folder for different departments. Or you can configure it in Jenkins master, and in that case we call it a global shared library. So that can be used by any pipeline on that connected to that master. That gets called from there. And if you have the enterprise version of Jenkins, you can even configure it at what we call operations center, and then any master connected to that can use that library, which has the added benefit that every team, for example, can get their own master. All right, so yeah, so I have a live demo prepared. Let's hope everything goes right. So I'm going to switch back to mirror mode, so I hope everything's going to work out fine with the presentation showing. All right, so. Of course I don't have internet, so is there Wi-Fi here or?
yeah. Could you guess? It's open Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's the easiest. Goes quicker going. But whatever.
Oh, the same goes for everybody that wants to use Wi-Fi.
Alright, so I'm just going to create two things. So, pipeline demo 1. Alright, that would have been easier. That's the initialize it, my bad. I'm very comfortable deleting stuff, as you see.
And really always copy paste just from the text.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not safe.
You never know when you make a
Teach
mistake.
yourself in that habit.
So
Yeah,
initialize
I know,
this.
but I'm not gonna say anything, just my laziness. That's
Alright. No, that's that one.
You do it
That's
right.
better. Alright. So, clone. Yeah. I'm starting to look at a tool called like Hub, which is like a wrapper around GitHub, but I'm not comfortable yet using that in a presentation.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah. Wow. This is sort of readable. Alright. I don't usually type on laptop keyboards.
It has a typo. Pipeline.
Yeah. Doesn't that matter that much, but
Yeah.
and then initialize. All right. So, don't call. This is set it available.
Misschien wel een gek hoor.
Alright, so let's start with a Jenkins file in the application folder. So what is this there? Alright. So everything in declarative starts with the pipeline. Let's see. Yeah, it does not really become larger, does it? Is that somewhat readable here? Alright. Alright, so this case agent any, I don't care. So you also have to start with the agent block. It's basically a node. Now, which node I'm gonna run on? In this case, I tell Jenkins, I don't know, just give me anything. What works? Then we have stages, which has at least a stage. Demo. Which needs steps. In this case, we just say message. Hello. Well, actually, in this case, echo. Okay. Pipeline agent stages, stage steps. Yeah. Okay. Alright, so now if we go to Jenkins, yeah. So in this case, I can make a multi-branch pipeline. Yeah, add source. In this case, I'm just going to do git instead of GitHub. That's quicker. Don't need credentials. I can just check out from here. All right. So yeah, it's not going to be surprising. It's just simply echo hello world. Oh, amazing. All right. So about a shared library. Shared library basically has two components you can use. So it has a fixed folder structure, and based on that folder structure, Jenkins will do something with it. So you have a source folder in which you can have groovy class files, just like package structure in Java. So you can just have source slash, I don't know, com mycujo slash blah blah, and create have a world.groovy there. and has it simply as a class, which you can instantiate as if it's just Groovy code. And you can create functions. Cool part about if you create a function, which is in the folder called vars, V-A-R-S, any file that is blah blah.groovy becomes a function you can call in a pipeline with the name of that Groovy file. So that's what we're going to do now first. I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to go one level up, back to, sorry for the sound. Yeah. Alright, so first thing first, I need to create a vars folder. It's getting ready to be at now. And there I will, so let's call it just hello.groovy. So hello.groovy. Now, this is where you have to comply to a format. Again, same as the folder structure. Any .groovy file in the vars folder gets called, and what they call is the function call. So you define a function called call, in which you can give any parameters, just like a method signature, right? For example, string name. In here, I can execute any pipeline call, just as I was able to in the Jenkins file. So I can say echo hello name. Alright, so first thing we have to do is we have to go to Jenkins and we have to configure the library. As I said, you can configure it in multiple locations, so if we go to here, I can also add it on this level, see, pipeline libraries. Well, and one interesting thing here, hopefully you can read this. Okay, you can read this, right? So this means that if I load the library here, it's untrusted. Not sure any one of you have ever seen a CSP error, like this is not allowed, illegal operation. Right, it's because Jenkins, if you run Groovy code in the JVM, which Jenkins master is running, you might potentially be able to do whatever Jenkins can on that machine, and sometimes Jenkins runs as root on that VM, and then you can do whatever Jenkins can do as root on that VM. You don't want to allow that very easily unless you really know what you're doing. So by default, it's shielded. All right. What if I want to do something that normally I would not be allowed? But hey, I trust myself. It's my master. Come on. So what I would do is I go to Jenkins, I go to Manage Jenkins, first go here and I copy paste this again. Right, so I'm going to go to Configure System. Look for a global. And here, global share, global pipeline libraries. And here we see this text. These libraries will be trusted, meaning they can run without sandbox restrictions and they use anything. So they can use internal classes, for example, as well. Again, not advisable, but if you really know what you're doing and for a specific feature you need it, best to do it in a shared library and make it available for everybody else. That way, at least you know where it's being used from, where it is used, where it's coming from, You can make sure it's tested, it's vetted, etc. Maybe you say, okay, we only give specific people access to write in this repository. But we get to that, how to say, implement it into your organization. So in this sense, it's a little bit biased, seeing as there's a description between, first you give the name, so I'd say lib demo, version, master. Okay, so another, what I find a cool feature of the shared libraries is that it basically is indexing a Git repository, and that's what it does. It checks out Git repository, puts that in the class path. So what you can give up, what you configure basically is saying, okay, I'm always checking out something from Git. So I'm checking out either a branch, a tag, or hash, what you want. Default, I would say I check out master branch, but that's why you have here allow version to be overridden. Meaning, I can say, okay, I'm gonna make a second branch with my evil hack, and then in my pipeline, I'm gonna use the evil hack branch. More concretely, I would advise versioning your libraries and then say people, we have version 1.10, please use version 1.10. If something breaks, people can go back to 1.9 and not be, their pipeline can still continue running even though you mess things up. Which I think is a very important thing for CI/CD pipeline tooling these days, that you want to limit the impact of environmental issues as much as possible. A shared library basically becomes an environmental configuration issue. If that has a problem, you won't be able to give people the ability to go back to a previous version that worked without having to do a lot of work on their, even especially if their application didn't have anything wrong. So I would advise to also leave this on, unless you're like, okay, we only have one version of this, we're not going to maintain any others. If this doesn't work, we're fucked anyway, so I won't allow it to be overridden. Otherwise, if people would be able to make a branch themselves, they could circumvent some checks. Again, it's about how you want to configure it.
So can you leave the default version empty?
No, so the default has to be something. So what you could also do is like you make a 1.0 version which has nothing in it and say that's default, and you have to make sure you select an actual version. So there's some options there, but in this screen it will give me an error if I leave it blank. You also have an option here called load implicitly. Load implicitly means it will do this git checkout any pipeline, right? No matter if somebody is like, I'm not using the library, yeah, boo-hoo, it's still gonna check it out before your pipeline starts. So use this one very carefully, and if you do use it with a library that's very, very small. Because imagine you're doing a git checkout. If you're gonna build a big library with lots of Groovy classes and you have lots of changes, and in a few years that checkout itself is gonna take a long time. And if that's gonna load on literally every build, that can be a big burden. So make sure your shared library is small and that you were very careful with load implicit. Because it also, if you have conflicting function names, yeah, you're basically running into ClassPath health Java, which ideally you want to shield people from, right? The idea is to provide people with a function and not managing ClassPaths in Java. All right, then here, a bit biased, we have modern SCM. So if you want to use, if you're going to check it out from Git, you select modern. And we have some small bugs here, please ignore. Right, so I can fill this in here. It's open source, so I don't need credentials. Okay, so lib demo one, I think. So one of the things I really love about this stuff is that if I go here, I have this page called pipeline syntax because I don't want to learn everything by heart. So in this case, I'm using a decorative. Why is this not? What's That's a shame. Okay. This is gonna make it. All right. Nothing in it, but does this work now? Yeah. All right. All right. Have to see why that happens. Anyway, so here again, as I saw, like we have the agent, so you can configure the agent and run. So this basically the syntax I just used. In this case, I want to use a library. So luckily, there's a thing called library. Say add lib demo1 library version. So I can specify the library version. In this case, I'm going to use master. I don't have any other branches yet. Then I simply say generate. I get this snippet. This all these things, the directives, are I'll say generally either high level or on stages level. You can configure them. So in a stage or on top level.
Can people discover the library somehow? Because they are added to Jenkins, it would be nice if they
Yeah.
could be
So
shown.
on this level, it's a bit difficult to find out. So what I generally did is like it's Groovy. So I used a pipeline for the pipelines. I used GroovyDoc to generate Groovy documentation like you would for JavaDoc, and publish that in a very easy accessible place or somewhere in Jenkins or whatever. And then you have an HTML thing like what is in there. I will show you another thing what you can use to discover what's inside the library. But to discover the libraries themselves is very difficult because you have to either see the configuration. So my advice would be to have like a homepage. Okay, we have these kind of libraries, and those are like some global libraries you can use. And per team, you do what you do. And if you want to share it with the world, share it, tell other people. And if you think it's really usable for a lot of more people, configure it as a global. Doesn't hurt to have more configured there. The UI to configure them is a bit clunky at the moment, but I'm pretty sure we'll get it fixed.
Is there a good source for these kind of like shared libraries where you can easily find them by functionality, for example?
No, not yet. So that's one of my concerns as well. So I think in the next few months. Yeah. So I have to say I'm not the only person involved, but definitely one of my things that I would like to have is that we get like a developer portal. We already have one for plugins. Maybe we should get one for shared libraries because for a lot of things they're going to replace most of the plugins. So definitely one to check out is from Fabric 8. Fabric 8 was a CI solution for Kubernetes. Those people actually now work for Cloudbees, and they're actually working on Jenkins X. So if you ever heard of Jenkins X, if you haven't, check that out. That's basically opinionated Jenkins on Kubernetes, replacing a whole entire suite of doing CI/CD with a opinionated way of doing Jenkins. Everything's API command line based. Anyway, they're building on that, so they're kind of abandoned Fabric 8, but their idea still lives on. Now really using Jenkins as a core. But they have some very good shared libraries, and one of the things we're going to do is we're going to make some public on at least Cloudbees side. So I'm probably going to be one of the initiative takers to get more out there. Because this is what we know as customers as well. They struggle with, okay, but how do I know I'm doing it right? And and if there's something that's already working for other people, why should I write my own shared library? One thing I will not go into today because I'm not 100% sure it's still working, but there should be a functionality that if you just in the name of the library, github.com/ like the repository location, it will, if it's not configured in Jenkins, it will try to check it out on GitHub. So that makes it a little bit easier for you as well. But that means even if it's not configured in Jenkins master at all, it can still use that. But then again, it's a double-edged sword because you can pull in any library, basically any open source code from GitHub as a library.
But it will always run untrusted by default.
Because if it's not configured as a global, it will be untrusted. So that's why that's why we have that distinction, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna copy paste this in. So we're going back to the Jenkins phone. Sorry. Still have audio. I don't know why. All right. So. And of course it doesn't format the way I want to. Anyway, so now instead of I'm gonna say echo hello world, no, we can move up now. We can now say hello. Alright. If I would have used the GitHub source, and then I can enable GitHub to push back notification to Jenkins, Jenkins will automatically build it. It will also be able to discover pull requests. Again, this is more about pipelines. If people want, I can show that after, but want to focus on the shared library. But I should now be able to run this again. So go to branches, run this. This one, and hopefully now it says hello. No. All right, typo in the name. No library in the demo one. All right, output. So this is where I should have copy pasted the name. Good. Yeah, so if demo one, then in this case I'm gonna rerun because nothing in my code changed. Yeah, hello Joost. Woo. Nice. So, and now if we go to the old school UI, you can actually see it checking out the library. So I'll put. Okay, that makes it readable. So yeah, so you see here, it's actually checking pipeline demo 1, and here it says, oh, hey, I need to use a library, so I'm going to check out this library as well. And yeah, found, match, master. Okay, I'm going to check out master revision. So So, one thing I always prefer is that there's auto-generated documentation as much as possible, or at least auto-discoverable. Luckily, you have this thing called, we have for, not sure who's used or worked with Jenkins plugins before, creating your own. So one of the things in the Jenkins plugins is that you can always provide some HTML file or text file with HTML encoding to provide the kind of documentation that you actually saw when we used the generator. It reuses the same elements, right? So I can do the same. So I have this hello.groovy. So if I make a hello.txt, yeah, too fast. Okay. Formatting them. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going back to my pipeline. Yeah, I want to use this new documentation version. So pipeline demo 1. Yeah, so it should still do exactly the same thing, all right? But now, if I go to the pipeline syntax page, this one, and I go to global variable reference, well, all the standard things that you can have and that you can use in your pipelines, but lo and behold, it's not here. What? Alright. Alright. I have to check out why it did not use that. Yeah, there we go. So this, I'll say, matches right the function that is there. So if there's a matching.txt file to a .ruby file, it will get parsed as HTML just like any other plugin would. So then you can write functions, and then if people use your library, as soon as they just use it, include it, any documentation that's in there, it gets rendered on this page. That would be also my advice. My advice would be to have explain what variables are used so they don't have to look into the code unless they want to. Maybe link to a repository so they can very easily figure out where is this thing coming from. And maybe have a, how to say, copy-pastable example. This is how you can use it. Right? Just like make it very easy, make it real library with all the documentation and things that you would use. Alright, so back to the presentation. Alright. So now that you've seen how you can easily make a shared library, but you can make any function you want. You can write all the Groovy code you want. You can make Groovy classes. When you configure that as a global shared library, you have access to basically everything Jenkins can do. So you can do a lot. Then of course there comes a thing: how are we going to use it in your organization? How are we going to structure this shared library? So what I've seen is several, I would call architectural types. How do you organize them? So basically, what I've seen is everybody for themselves, everybody on their own little island. Okay, yeah, we make our own shared library. Can you please add it to the master? Or in case of, I would say, if you have the enterprise version, you can have every team its own master. So everybody just creates their own library, puts it in there, and maybe they see some cool stuff in somebody else's library, copy paste it over. Right? Potentially you reinvent wheels, but on the other hand, it keeps libraries usually very small and very focused on, okay, we're just going to support these few types of applications, or so that works to some degree. But yeah, you can end up with everybody doing literally the same thing. So there's always a bit of danger in that. Alright, what I've also seen is like we're gonna set up a CI/CD team or a pipeline team, and they're gonna write a shared library or pipeline for everyone. They're the masters of Jenkins, they're the masters of pipelines, they write that thing for everyone. Can start out really well. In the end, it becomes really problematic, and I know firsthand. Everything comes on you, and you can't support everything. There's dozens of languages, especially in a big bank. There's literally a dozen languages used. You cannot write functions for everyone. there's Java applications, and some use J2EE or Jakarta EE nowadays. Some use Spring. Some write Java code that runs on AWS Lambda. And you want to support all that, I don't make separate libraries, but then it's better to have those who know how Lambda works to support themselves. Right, so generally they really grow into a big ball now. You have a single responsible team, which can become a bottleneck. So if you have a small group of teams, say you have 5 teams who maybe 2 or 3 different languages, this can work very well. It just doesn't scale. So be very careful of that. Plus, another big problem I see with this is what I've noticed as well is that you don't distribute the knowledge. So in this case, the knowledge is distributed, but maybe nobody's an expert. But everybody's at least medium level, maybe 1 or 2 experts. In this case, usually you have 1 or 2 experts and everybody else knows almost nothing. If those experts leave, those things never get improved, right? And everybody just abandon ship and use something else. So then, right, you can have 1 or more small libraries which are global, and then libraries per team or per technology that really support specific things. Make them really small, really suitable for for a few particular tasks. And make, for example, the core libraries a shared responsibilities. No central team. There's just like open source. There's a core group of people that maintain that, but they're not in one team. They're just maybe senior developers from different teams, or developers in different teams that have affinity with CI or Jenkins, and they together maintain this. But I think it's very difficult to start with this. So I would start with one of the first 2, and then grow into learn it, see how you distribute knowledge, how you build up expertise, how you get a feel for how to use the libraries, and then move to this kind of model. Any questions? So part of the technical aspect, or how to set up your library, or how to configure it in Jenkins or things like that. You also have like, how can you make sure that organization really benefits, especially when you scale up. So what we did at AB Number was that we made all the global pipelines completely open accessible. And up until that point in time, there was no single repository open for everyone. Everything was locked down for specific teams or departments or even vendors, like Capgemini coders cannot look into the backend code written by TCS, even if they're working on the same team or same vertical slice. So that was, for them, groundbreaking. We have something, everybody can see this. Yes, everybody can see this. Everything is in there that you need to know. It's there. And if you see something to improve it. Make a fork, change it, make a pull request. Just like with an open source library. I cannot catch every little thing, right? Or the team that was there. We cannot catch a single thing. It's too many things, too many people working on different things. We had Linux, Windows, Mac. A batch script that worked perfectly on the different Linux versions, and then one of those didn't work on Mac. Shit. Right? But those people that work on Mac, they probably know much better how to solve that than someone who, until a few months ago, never touched a Mac in his life. Right? And so let people work together on building up the expertise, and where there's fringes or niches, either make separate libraries or let them contribute. One of the things that we did very well, I think, is that we have several global libraries for specific languages, like Java, the iOS mobile applications, Android native, those kind of things. All of them needed some security. All of them needed some secure coding in their pipelines. Most of the time, those tools were taken care of by people who knew security very well. They knew secure coding very well. But imagine how many developers do you have in an organization, and how many of them are an expert in security? Right? It's maybe 100 to 1 or more to 1. Letting them work on shared libraries via an open source model means that they can, contribute their knowledge, put it in those, embedded in those libraries, and then anyone who wants to do a HP45 scan, there's a library for that, and it's maintained by people who really know how to do the scan properly. As they maintain, they can check, right? They work with the code as well. And when somebody comes by and say, okay, I don't think this is an actual issue with my code, they can help, see if there's something they can change in the pipeline, how the function is called, and improve it from there. And once it is there, it's improved forever. So that's, I think, where shared library with a few core libraries and an open source model is, I think, very beneficial for a large organization. But again, if you have 2 or 3 teams, maybe not that useful. But when you start growing 5, 10, 15 teams, more, I think this model is going to be the thing that's going to help you a lot.
And not only for your shared libraries of Jenkins, but for all your code.
Definitely, I'm a big advocate of open source. But again, in some organizations have regulatory problems, right? Regulatory challenges. But pipeline code generally is not part of that regulatory part. So maybe the deployment part might be, but definitely the CI part, so the initial scanning, is more easy to share within your organization. There's less rules on that. Until maybe the DMB or the CP starts understanding coding, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. All right, so some best practices, advices. So they're my point of view, so not my employers. So use declarative when you can, right? When you start getting into like, okay, we're gonna have to jump through all kinds of hoops to be able to do this in declarative. Maybe then use scripted, but you can still use a script block in declarative, and maybe in time declarative will catch up and you can replace that, or you just make a call to a shared library where you have the ugly codes nicely away, right, encapsulated, to be replaced later. Avoid complex logic in the sense that Jenkins files, anything related in that, everything that's not an explicit step, so SH is a step. Calling that declarative function, call it that shared library function is a step. But everything else, like if you do if else or so on, actually gets executed on the master. So try to avoid that. In the declarative format, we have things called when as a statement block. So when in the stage, I can say when branch master, and it will only execute that stage if the branch is master. Again, another benefit if you use the multi-branch pipeline or GitHub organization, that works out of the box. And if you use a pipeline from SCM, that doesn't work. The function doesn't work. Use scripts you can run locally. So maybe you have Python scripts or shell scripts. Make them have some parameters, and if they're really global, put that in a shared library with parameters, and people can call it via that. But don't try to rebuild Maven or Gradle or Ant in the Groovy file. So try to avoid that. Why? Because if Jenkins has a problem, then how can you debug that? Is there a problem in the script, or is it a problem in Jenkins? Is it a plugin failure? If you have a shell script, or Python script, you can check on your machine. This still works as a problem in Jenkins, right? You can also run the same thing locally, and then, okay, that seems fine, then commit to Jenkins. Jenkins breezes through, and it saves some trouble there. Also, to avoid that kind of mess, think about what you want to do, what you want to achieve with how you're working, how your development flow is, how your way of working is, and then try and figure out how to make the pipeline help you in that, instead of okay, we think the pipeline should do this, and if it doesn't work for us, we just change the way we work. So one of the things what I've sometimes noticed that people they do the hello world example, and then they forget the way of working they did before. They just start continuing writing in that file or in the Jenkins file or in the shared library file, and they can keep writing in there because it's cool. It's a cool new thing, and there's all kinds of new plugins we can use in different ways. And then they go back and figure out, okay, but how did we actually work? What do we want to achieve? For example, with pull requests, what do we want to do? Lots of things you can do with pull requests in the declarative format and shared libraries, but what do you really want to achieve? I've seen situations, for example, where they had written a lot of logic to be able to have console output in all different colors, where automatically would give status updates of stages in GitHub in GitHub comments. So, like, if you want to see the actual flow of your pipeline, you don't look at Jenkins. You look at there's comments in GitHub, and then you can see, okay, this test failed. Oh, maybe I should look in Jenkins now what the console says. Figure out the way of working and see how the pipeline can really help you there. But just building it because it's there, it's kind of All right, so that's it. More about shared libraries. Jenkins.io has a lot of information on this. Look at there. Again, if you have any questions, you can find me on Twitter or my email. I'll be happy to answer any questions, especially related to pipelines and shared libraries.
Question. Where do the pipelines execute? On the master or on the slave that the build runs?
Both, basically. So it depends on the part. So in general, the Jenkins file, all the checkout, what you saw also of the library, checkout is done on master. And it's added to the class path of the master. On the master, you have a process running. When it allocates a node, it starts a process on that node, Java process as well, and it starts calling to it. When, for example, you say sh blah blah, it's going to do an RPC call to the other process in the other machine and say, please execute sh blah blah blah. Another reason why, if you have a lot of different steps you're going to execute in a shell command, it's better to do multi-line shell command with like a triple quotes, and then you can have multi-line. Because every time you have a sh command, it's going to wrap up whatever it did before, write down the end state on disk on the master, execute the next step, serialize the data, send it to the other node, deserialize data, execute the step, and back and forth. Another reason why it would be better to just have a shell script and say, Jenkins, execute the shell script, and it does different things, but those things all get executed on the slave, and only the end result gets called back.
So the master basically gets more busy.
Sorry? Yes.
The master gets more
Yeah,
busy.
so that's why another reason why we advocate maybe use build tools, use CLIs. So my favorite way of dealing with this is like if I have to call APIs, maybe process some JSON. Don't do it in Groovy. Even though it looks performant, it adds a lot of stress on the master. Also because every line gets serialized and sent over. What I do is I write small CLI applications in Go. Very easy to write a command line tool that parses some JSON and it gives an end result. Right? And then make sure that either in your code base or you can use it as a custom tool or things like that. You put them in Artifactory, you download them from there or make them part of a shared library. And you pull them in, you execute them, let them tell you what happened in that step, and then continue from there.
So we mentioned shared libraries versus plugins. Like for example, there's a Vault plugin, right, for fetching secrets or whatever. But this could very well be a shared library. I mean, it's just common functionality. It talks to an API, it takes some input output. But in case you want to what's the main advantage aside from versioning and all that stuff from using a shared library versus using a plugin or writing a plugin yourself and sharing that with your team.
Yeah.
I mean, of course there's the added installation step and all that stuff. this makes it maybe a little bit easier just to include, but
So it depends. Like I think the full plugin is definitely a case where you want the plugin because it does some underwater magic to be able to securely handle API calls.
yeah, the
and-
app role thing.
Yeah. So that's those kind of things probably should always be a plugin. But lots of API things like there's an Atlassian plugin, which basically does API calls. If you don't keep those two in sync, your server and the plugin, yeah, it's going to be annoying. Having a shared library is very easy to tune which one I'm going to use. Plus, it only gets loaded when I want to, and usually it's much smaller footprint. So plugins can have usually a lot of plugins have dependencies on other plugins in Jenkins. So that means updating one means required to update dependencies, which means you might update plugins which need other dependencies, and so you get a whole dependency chain of things that need to be updated. If there's a conflict there, you might be in trouble. If you have the enterprise version, Cloudbees will make sure that there's some list of plugins that are good. I think now there's also an open source initiative that does that as well, called Jenkins Essentials. But as the name implies, it's a small subset of the plugins.
But how do you handle dependencies in shared libraries then?
Well, that's the point. If you have shared libraries that are very focused and only do what they need to do, then they should not have dependencies. Again, if you say, okay, we need a lot more things, maybe then write a plugin. But the plugin, I think, is much more invasive to your environment. And you need to be able to install it. Yeah, it also depends on how many masters you have, right? So some organizations have a master per team. Then you might have 100 masters. Installing a plugin on 100 masters can be done, but then you probably need the enterprise license to have the system that installs the plugin directly on all masters. Otherwise, having people just configure a shared library, it's much easier to share around because you can even load one directly in your code if you want to. Any other questions?
Well, one hint, if you start with Jenkins, use as less plugins as possible. Otherwise it's unmaintainable.
Yeah, so
What if you do
Yeah, but
just
yeah,
focus on your building?
I have used it in the past a lot, and that was exactly my problem. Like it was the list was so long, we had to reinstall it because I don't know, someone messed up a disk and it was corrupted, and we didn't make backups and we didn't know how to reconstruct it. We had to reinstall everything.
yeah, so my advice use declarative style of pipeline. Pipeline as code, so everything Jenkins file in your repository. Use shared libraries for shared functionality calls, and use a lot of shell scripts, Python scripts, those kind of things. CLIs that do the complex things. That means that you don't rely too much on plugins. There's a lot of plugins, but if you really look at how many of them are actually maintained, regularly updated and tested, there's maybe 75 left. So be careful of those. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, so the shared libraries, they are executed on the master, and the non-shared libraries, they are executed on...
No, so in general, any kind of Groovy code in the pipeline gets executed in master. The only benefit that a shared library has is that if it is a global shared library, it runs outside of the CSP and run CPS, and then runs directly on the class path. So this is a little bit faster.
So if you do exit on the system.exit on a shared library, it kills Jenkins master, and if you do it on a non-shared library, it will...
Well, global shared library. There might be some protection still, right? I haven't tested system.exit, but that might be. So again, that's why it's specifically said this is trusted. So yeah, you have to know what you're doing. But definitely that could happen, right? That you can do something. So for example, if you have a shared library that is a global, so configured on the master level, you can read files and from string you can trim it, substring it, and then translate it to a date, right? You can use a date formatter. In the CSP, you can't use date formatter. Right, so you can run into some stupid issues. So sometimes from some of those kind of little things, I just write a shared library, make it global, and have a little function that can just, okay, here's a string, give me the date, and I want to print it in this way, so I make that a complete function. So just say, okay, this gives us the base, this is for example Apple string, I want a nicely Dutch printed string back of the date time. Any other? Alright. So, yeah, so for those who are not aware, later this year, little, how to say, spam here, sorry. We're gonna have Jenkins World, DevOps World. Soon there's one in US in San Francisco, but we also have one in Nice, a little bit closer.
Is the French one in English? Because the
Mostly, almost everything will be in English. No. There was a French event, which I did not go to. No, so this is I will be there as well. I think Kojan as well. Anyway, luckily I have a smaller discount code because normally it's your full last name. So now this discount code is 20% off of any type of ticket you buy. So use it if you want to. So you can share it, so it's fine. Right? If you share it on Twitter or whatever, it's fine to share that code. And so it's a 4-day event. First 2 days are workshops, which are separate, excluded from the ticket price. And then we have 2 full days of presentations from industry leaders and so on. Agenda is live on our website now. And one thing to add, until the 15th of July, there's the super early bird discount, so it's half price. And then on top of that, you can still get 20%.
The only thing missing is an euro.
Cloudbees.com. Alright, yeah, and then I have one more slide. Basically, I used template from Slide Carnival, pictures from Unsplash. I think it's nice to give credit. I believe in open source. If you open source media, then I credit them as well. Alright, that was it for me.